So JSF 2.2 as part of Java EE7. So these are the new features that are introduced. HTML5 friendly markup, and it does have two features underneath, pass-through elements and pass-through attributes. We are going to talk about what is called the resource library contract, and the last topic is basis flow. So HTML5 friendly markup. So JSF 2.2 wants to make sure HTML5 is fully supported and integrated with JSF. So basically, the goal is to allow page author to have flexible control over rendered page output, meaning page author might want to mix and match JSF components with HTML5 elements. Some cases, they want to start with HTML5 page with HTML5 tags, but they want to take advantage of JSF components, for example, like JSF beans. It might be the other way around as well. So you might, as a page author, you might want to start with the facelet, and inside the facelet, you want to take advantage of HTML5, tags and attributes. Okay, so it supports both directions. So it supports with path-through elements and path-through attributes. So let's take a look at each of these. Pass-through elements allows you to use HTML5 elements and attributes, but to treat them as equivalent JSF components at the server. So basically, you are going to use HTML5 tags like a body, input type. In this case, this is like I want to use color type and search. On the server side, it will be converted into HBody and HInput and things like that. And in fact, if you take a look at the Java E7 tutorial documentation, it gives you all the possible combination of input type, and these are the types that are supported in HTML5 and how it get converted into facelet tags. Okay. So how to make a pass-through element? So basically, you are going to, this is the case that you are going to use HTML tags, HTML5 tags like HTML and input and things like that. Now, if you want to take advantage of JSF beans, for example, the only thing you have to do is you have to have a single attribute, the namespace with the JSF. So you have to have this namespace first of all, and then you are going to use this JSF namespace in one of the attributes of your HTML5 element, and then you can access the beans like this. Okay, makes sense? So path through is basically when you want to use HTML5 tags. Okay. However, you want to take advantage of JSF, the component features, for example, accessing JSF beans. Okay, so I'm going to actually explain the pass-through attribute as well, and then we're going to do exercise 1 and 2. So path-through attributes are the reverse of the path-through elements. Okay, so if you specify the path-through attributes in the JSF component, the attribute name and values are passed straight through the browser without being interpreted by JSF. So this is a case that where you are going to use the JSF components, and then you want to take advantage of the HTML5 attributes like a color. So let's see an example of this. So in this case, I am actually using JSF component like HForm and HInput text and things like that. Yet I want to take advantage of HTML5 attributes, for example, minimum, title, type, and things like that. Okay. So in this case, basically, whenever you have HTML5 tags, like HTML5 attributes, like a type, min, title, and required, basically, you are going to prefix it with this pass-through namespace. And what it does is that, these attributes that are prefixed with this path-through attribute will not be interpreted by JSF container. okay, it will be just given to the browser in this form, so that browser will actually interpret them as HTML5, the attributes. Okay, so this will be in fact the resulting to this HTML. So type number, value, minimum, and 30, and the required. So these are all possible HTML5 the attributes. Okay, so path-through attribute is the reverse side of the path-through elements. Okay, in which you are using JSF components, but you want to take advantage of HTML5 attributes. You can also actually use the path-through attribute tag. So suppose if you, if you have the JSF component like this, okay, one way you would do is actually using this path-through namespace. That's perfectly fine. Or you can use this path-through attribute, the tag. So this is the JSF core tag, okay, and so name and email. Okay, again, it will result in like this. Okay, this is the case when you have a single attribute. Now, you can also actually use path-through attributes when you happen to have a bean that contains name value pairs. Okay, so in that case, those name value pairs like type number, minimum 1 and maximum 30, required, and title, all this, the name value pairs will be considered as HTML5 attributes. Okay. All right, so that's exercise 1 and 2. So let me actually show you how exercise 1 and 2 is working. So I have imported the application. So let me actually show the attribute first. Okay. So you are going to build and run the application, and select Glassfish. So the before Java E7 is not using path-through attributes. So in that case, you can see the color type is not recognized. So that's the reason it's just considered as a text, right? So this is certainly not taking advantage of HTML5. Now, in this case, it's actually taking advantage of the fact that this color is actually HTML5 attribute. So you can see, this I can actually use this color palette. Okay. I just added a code for this. Okay, so you're gonna see just this one. Okay, so if you see the code, so this is the case where you're using pass-through attributes. So you have to have this namespace. Okay, and here we have input text, and then we are using pass-through attribute namespace and color. Okay, so it will be just considered as HTML5 attribute. And this is the case that we are using pass-through attribute for core namespace. Okay, I have to actually change the document for this. For now, you are going to actually add the code yourself like this. Okay, so this is the you have to actually add this F namespace, JSF core namespace, and you can actually do the same thing with this. Okay, so this and this, they are the same. Okay, now if you take a look at the before case, so that is the after case, and this is the before case where we are not actually using the namespace. Okay, so it doesn't recognize. So in this case, HTML the JSF runtime does not recognize this one as HTML5 the attribute. Okay, so that's the reason it will just consider it as actually text field. In fact, this is just being ignored. Okay, so that is the attribute. Now, if you take a look at the elements, so let's run this guy. Element case, I'm going to show you how to use path-through element first. Okay, so again, you can see, this is using color. Okay, so this is all okay. All right. Now, oops. This one somehow works too, and I'm not sure why this is the case. So maybe this is the reason, why, because it's actually considered as a facelet. So if I actually do like a HTML, then, oops, face, not index before. Yeah, so, I expect this result. Okay, because it doesn't get recognized by the JSF runtime. Um, but if I'm actually changing this guy as XHTML, then it still works. Okay, so that was a little bit puzzling for me. But anyway, so let's take a look at the code. So this is the after the case, and this is again using pass-through element. Okay, so in pass-through element, you have to use this namespace, JSF namespace, and you have to you have to actually set any one single element with this JSF element, the namespace. So what it does is basically, as long as there is actually one single attribute, the namespace with this JSF, and then pass-through element feature will be kicked in. Okay, so you can actually use this the bean properties. Okay, but you can see these are all HTML5 HTML tags. There is no JSF component involved. Yet you are being able to use JSF the expression language syntax like this. Okay, and and here this is also color. Okay, now if I actually take this out, let me see whether that is going to work. Okay, so refresh it. That didn't work. Okay, so we have to make sure you have to have this JSF ID like this. Oh, it looks like I have to restart the application. So let me actually try this one, and let's run the elements. That one still works. Interesting. So it looks like as long as there is actually at least one element in the page, it seems like it's actually working. Now, if I actually take a look at if you take a look at the before XHTML, this is the thing that I kind of, expect it shouldn't work, but it still works. Okay. So we are not using any namespace, and yet we were able to actually use this guy, the JSF beans. Okay, and maybe this is because it's actually still considered as a facelet. It's actually XHTML5. But if I change this file into HTML, then this is just considered as the just a string. Okay, all right. So that is actually the documentation I have. So let me just to show you the documentation so that you can actually follow along with it. So the exercise 1 is a path-through element. Okay, and if you take a look at the code, yeah, so this is the index before XHTML file, and this is the after, meaning this is the case that we are using path-through element. Okay, so we have a namespace, and then we are using that namespace in one of the attributes of those elements. Okay, and you can actually modify the code to add email and telephone. So these are all HTML5 introduced type. Okay, so you can certainly see these things. Okay, and you can actually the HTML5 type. I mean, if you actually provide the wrong email syntax, then it will give you HTML5 generated the validation message like this. Okay. Exercise 2 is the attributes. Okay, so this is a case that you are using JSF components, yet you are using HTML5 attributes. Okay, so this is a case that we are using attribute correctly, so that this color, the palette is actually being displayed correctly. Okay, I haven't. I'm gonna just show you so that you can. I haven't updated the document for attributes here. Yeah, so this one I have not updated in the lab document, lab exercise yet. I just did make a change. So in this case, if you want to try this one, you want to actually type these things yourself. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to actually update the document while you guys are doing the lab. So I'm going to give you guys about 15 minutes to do these two exercises. Okay. Next topic is resource library contract. So what do I mean by resource contract? A resource contract includes a set of template files, style sheets, and JavaScript files and images. In some cases, you might want to actually choose a different set of resource contracts. That's basically what this is all about. Okay, so it allows you to define a set of resource contracts in reusable fashion, and you can actually pick and choose a set of resource contract for different URL patterns. Okay, so you can choose a different resource contract for different URL patterns. And you can also actually package this resource library in a jar file. And you can actually give this jar file to other developers who write different applications. And they can take advantage of this resource, the contracts in the application. Okay. All right, so the steps for creating resource contracts. First, you're going to create a directory called contract. So this is hard-coded name you want to use. So on the web INF, you are going to create contracts. And on the contract, you can have as many as you want contracts. So I'm going to name it as, I'm going to create the two new contracts, contract 1 and contract 2. And under each of these contract, you are going to specify your resources. Again, template files or style sheets and JavaScript files, whatever you need, or image files. Okay. So this is an example. So here in my application, I have two contracts, contract 1 and contract 2. And these contracts are on the contracts directory. And contract 1 has template.xhtml file, style.css file, my LMG file, and my JS JavaScript file, and things like that. Okay, so you can have as many as you want contract in your application. Now, how you're going to actually use which contract for what URL pattern. So that's something that you are going to specify in your faces config.xml file. So here, whenever there is a URL pattern of /contract1, I want to use contract 1. Rest of it, I'm going to use contract 2. So of course you can have as many as you want URL patterns. Okay. So the first hit, the URL pattern, as long as the URL pattern is matched, that contract is going to be used. Okay. All right. So let's do exercise 3. So I'm going to use a lab documentation first. Okay. So here we are going to run the application, and you are going to see depending on what you're going to use. Yeah, so let's actually run it first. Contract, so choose JSF 2.2 and contract, and run the application. And as a default, it's going to use red contract. However, if I choose blue contract and apply, it's going to use a blue contract. And if I choose red, again, it's going to use red contract. Okay. So if you take a look at the code, so let's take a look at the code. So this is a faces config.xml file where we define the URL pattern. So any URL that start with a user will actually use a blue contract. Any URL, any other URL, rest of it will use red contract. Okay. And now if you take a look at the directory structure, oh, I'm sorry, it's not under WebINF. Yeah, I think I should actually change the slide. Yeah, it should be just under the root, not on the WebINF. My apology. So contracts are on the root, and then in this case you have a blue and red the resources, and so blue resources has CSS file, and template file. Okay. And so if you take a look at the template.xml file, the blue template should have a blue header. And so I'm going to actually use here. So if you take a look at the, so on the contracts, we have a blue contract and red contract. Okay. And so, you know, in the template, you can see it's specified blue and, yeah, so it's specified right here, the blue header, and this one says red header. Red header right here. Now, it's actually using, if you take a look at the CSS file for blue, let's take a look at the blue. Is actually using the background color. This is actually blue, okay, and for red, is using this guy as a background color. So I'm going to actually change this guy to red, and I'm going to change this guy to blue. That's more obvious and easy to understand. Okay. And let's save, and let's actually run the application one more time, and it should actually work exactly the same. Okay, blue, blue. Okay, so that worked. Okay. All right, so that is basically what it does. Now, the exercise I want you to do is you're going to add another contract. So you are going to have another contract. You can just copy this red and you know, and create yellow. Okay, and then you're going to have to change the CSS layout CSS file to yellow. And then also you modify template.html file just displaying yellow. Okay. And then index HTML file, you're going to just add another one of this, okay, and you're going to run the application like this, okay. Yeah, so I'm going to actually let you do that exercise right now, and then we're going to actually move forward with packaging as the next topic, okay. So I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes to try this exercise. So when you run the application, so let's run the application again. So I'm going to run the application, and basically you actually go to another contract. Oh, actually go to another contract. Go to another contract. Oh, okay. Actually, I didn't have full explanation. I was actually explaining that part, but I didn't get it yet. So let me actually spend. So as I said, you can package this resource library that contains multiple resource contracts into a jar, and then you can actually give this jar to other developers for building their applications. Okay. In that case, the library file has to be under and then those developers can place that jar file on the webinf/live directory. So you could create the mycontract.jar file that contains multiple contracts, and then you can give that jar file and to a developer, and that developer can actually just use it right away. Okay. So that is basically exercise 4. So in exercise 4, we are going to see how basically we have contract library, and this is library implementation. So this is the case that we are going to just build a library. So you are going to just the Maven install, and it's going to just create a library that contains the contract. So it basically created this contract called the job file. Yeah, this job file, JSF 2.2 contract library import 1.0 snapshot job file. Okay, and we yeah, so that is actually installed in my local Maven repository. Okay. And if you take a look at that import, it basically contains the same set of contract. Let's see. Yeah, so in this, yeah, something I have mentioned clearly was that when you're creating that job file, that contract has to be on the meta inf directory. Okay, so here, these are the same contracts that we have seen before. Okay, now this is the different application that actually take advantage of that job file. So in this case, if you let's actually run this guy first. And am I red? And it goes to blue, red, and things like that. Okay. So in this case, if you take a look at the webinf directory on the live, you can see the this is actually contains the job file that was created. So if you take a look at the job file, you can see it contains this resources. Okay. So that's basically how things work. I'm going to give you guys about about 7 minutes to try this exercise. And right now, yeah, okay. So it's actually 10:30, 10:40. So we can have, yeah, we'll actually do break later on. The last topic in this presentation is Faces Flow. So what is and why you want to use Faces Flow? Flow basically provides reusable page flow logic with flow scope beans. So pages in a flow can share flow scope beans, and pages can call each other. And the concept is actually quite popular in Spring Webflow. Okay, so Spring Webflow, you can define the flow logic into an XML file, and that XML file basically capture the flow of certain operations. For example, checkout flow in an online store and hotel reservation flow. And this flow could be reusable in other applications. Okay, so that's the idea of basis flow. Same idea of Spring Webflow. So characteristics of a flow. So flow includes a set of pages, the XHTML facelet pages, and usually one or more flow scoped managed beans. And these flow scoped managed beans maintain state, and they are available only during the scope. So if the scope exit out, then those beans are gone. Okay. Each flow has a flow configuration. So this flow configuration will define entry point and the list of parameters and return value and things like that. So typically, your application will include flows in the directory structure like this. So in this case, under the root of the application, you can define directories. Each of those directories will represent a different flow. So in this case, we have defined two flows, flow 1 and flow 2. Okay. And as a default, the name of the facelet, in this case, flow1.xhtml file, on that flow directory, that is a starting point, starting node, or starting page. In the flow 2, we have flow2.xhtml file, and that is, as a default, starting page for flow 2 flow. Okay. All right. And each flow should have a flow definition. Now, flow definition can be defined declaratively through a file, XML file, or it could be defined programmatically. So in our previous example, each of these flows in fact have flow definition file called flow1-flow.xml, and in this case is flow2 flow.xml file. So the naming convention is the name of the flow dash and then flow.xml. So that means that is a definition, flow definition file for that particular flow. So this is the case that both of these flows are, the flow definitions are the created in the form of XML file. You can create them in the form of Java code, and we're going to see that example later on. So this is the flow definition file of flow1 flow. Okay, so here this is the definition, flow definition. Okay, should be the same as this guy, and you can define a lot of things. In this case, it returns what is the return node. Okay, so in this case, the return node is going to be outcome of this bean. So it's going to call home action method of flow1 bean. So that will return a string outcome, and that string outcome will be used as the next return node. Is as a return node, not the next node. Okay. So this is the way that you are going to define flow definition programmatically. Okay. So you can see this is actually reflecting exactly the same flow ID, and the view node. So he's actually defining. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like it doesn't actually define return case. Okay. That's something that we're going to actually do. And finally, you're going to actually call the go flow. So in the hands-on lab, we're going to actually have an exercise that creates exactly the same of this one in programmatically like this, as well as the using XML file like this or programmatically. Okay. This is a flow bin, so you specify the name, you specify the flow scope using flow scope annotation, and then you specify which flow this particular bin belongs to. So this one belongs to only flow 1, and this bin state cannot be seen in other flows. All right, so let's actually do exercise 5 and 6. So this is a very simple flow, which contains a single flow, and one is using XML file for creation of the flow definition, and the other one is using Java for creating flow definition. Okay, so let's take a look at the exercise 5. So when you run the application, so let's run this application first. It's very simple. Flow simple declarative. Okay. Run as run on server. So then you click flow 1. It goes to the first page, and then it goes to the next page. And here we are going to save a state. So let's say a JPassion, and then we are going to go next. The nice thing about the flow is that you can actually go back and forth, and it will actually maintain the state in this bean. So this JPassion is saved as the value of a property of flow bean, and as long as we are in this flow, that value is accessible. Okay, and I can go home now. So this is a case when you actually click the home is out of it. It actually moves out of the flow. So in our case, if you take a look at the when the flow is exit out, okay, it goes to the return node, and return node is supposed to be outside of the flow. So in our case, the third page. So in this case, when click the this flow 1b XHTML file, so that's this page. So when that is actually clicked, okay, it will actually go to a return node. And return node is this guy. So return node has to be outside of the flow. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this code in a bit more detail. So I'm going to use the lab documentation. So this is what we just did, okay? So if you take a look at the structure, we have flow1 directory, and which means we have only a single flow definition here. And this is flow1. Flow is the definition file, and then this is the starting node. Okay, flow1 has to be the same name as the flow itself. So flow1.xhtml file. Then it actually goes the flow1a and flow1b. So this is actually how things work. So I'm actually explaining the flow of this one. So when the application is run, this index.xhtml file gets displayed. Okay. So when the button is clicked, when this button is clicked, it will go to flow1. So what the JSF container does is that when the action is actually clicked like this, okay, and it will see whether there is a flow named as flow1. Okay. So of course we have that flow1. So it will actually take a look at the flow1 definition file. So that is a flow1 flow.xml file. So here it defines only the return node. Okay, so we're gonna actually get back to this one later on. Okay, now flow1 xhtml file is the starting node, so that gets displayed. Okay, so you say first page. That's actually the first page. Let's actually go back to so this is the first page reflecting this guy. Okay, so first page in flow1 xhtml file, and it actually gives the B name. Okay, flow1b, and you can also check whether this particular page is in the context of a flow or not by calling face context application flow handler current flow. If it is not null, that means it is inside the flow. This page is inside the flow. Okay, and then the next button. So this next button is calling the next action. Flow1a. So Flow1a at this point, JSF container will see whether there is the facelet page of Flow1a. Okay, so we do have that, right? So the Flow1a, so that's actually this page, second page, which is a Flow1 xhtml file. So again, it does have the same information, but it actually have an input text. So it's going to save the value into flow scope. Okay, so this is the flow scope, whatever. And then I can actually go back or go next. Okay, all right. And and then we actually go to the next. And in that case, it's gonna actually go to flow1b xhtml file. Okay. So basically, it's going to display the page, display the value of the flow scope. Okay, so that's the reason it actually display this thing. And again, it goes to flow1a and the go home. Now, in this case, when this go home is clicked, okay, what container will do is again, if there is in fact a go home facelet page in the same directory, okay. If it does, it probably go that page. Okay, if it is not, it will actually see whether this is in fact the something else. So in fact, this is actually go home action is in fact compared in the configuration file. So if the return ID is this, okay, then the container knows that this is not the facelet page. This is actually for return. So what it'll do is it will actually take a look at the outcome of this. So flow1b, flow1 bean home action. So that means if you take a look at the bean home action, that will return index as the outcome, and that outcome is going to be used as actually the next page to display. But because we actually exiting out the flow, this index.xhtml file should be outside of the flow. So that's basically what you're seeing. So we are looking at simple declarative here. If you take a look at the flow, so it's actually displaying this guy, index.xhtml file. Okay, so from 1b, when you click go home, because this go home was specified in the configuration file of this as the return node, okay, and it gets the slash index, and that slash index has to be the one of this guy outside of the flow. Okay. All right. So that is and now I'm going to actually ask you guys to modify the code. Here you are going to add another page and a different return. So we are going to add another page called go home to. Okay, and then you're going to actually modify the flow 1c. So instead of actually going to the home ID, go home, we are going to actually have a flow 1c. And then in the configuration file, we are going to actually have another go home too. Okay, and in this case, we are going to have a go home action 2 method here, index 2. And you're going to create the index2.xhtml file. So, you will say outside of flow 2 instead of outside flow. And so when you click this application, you are going to actually have a next and next. And, here you can either go home or home 2. So basically, we can actually have two different return node. Okay. So that is basically how that behaves. So I have provided a solution, so you can just run the solution in this case. So let me run the solution and see how that behaves. Flow 1, next, and next, and this is the third. We go the next, and now we can either go home or we can go to home 2. Oops, yeah, in this case, I have to refresh the page. Why no active context for the scope? Looks like the scope object is not really actually set up correctly. Okay, so if I go to the next, let me actually, it looks like a scope is kind of messed up at this point. So let's run this guy. I have to take a look at that. Flow 1, next, next. Home 2, yeah, so it's now is actually displaying home 2, now entering flow 1 again. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna give you guys about 10 minutes to try this exercise, and let's have 15 minutes break as well. So we'll be back 11:25. Okay, so multiple flows. So example we have seen so far is a very simple the application that contains a single flow, but you could certainly have multiple flows, and that is probably typically the case of the application. So calling flows can call another flow. The invocation of the flow is maintained in the call stack, and the new flow causes a push onto the stack, and the return causes a pop. So, basically it works just like a calling another method, say. Okay. Flows can be also nested, so that if you call one flow from another and exit the second flow, the return to the calling flow rather than the second flow's return code. Yeah, actually, this is probably should be under this one as well. So data in the flow is scope in the flow alone, but you can pass data from one flow to another by specifying parameters and calling the other flow. So as we talked about, flow beans, flow scope the beans actually only visible within a particular flow, right? So if a particular flow calls another flow, how do they actually pass data? So that's where they are going to use parameters, okay? Just like calling another method. So this is an example of flow 1, flow definition. So, it's actually calling flow 2, and the flow ID is flow 2, and this is the outbound parameter, meaning these are the values that flow 1 wants to pass to flow 2. Okay, and flow also actually have input parameters. So in this case, flow 2 should have flow 2 should have received those things as input parameters. Okay, so let's take a look at the exercise 7. So in this exercise, we are going to see how we are going to so the multiple flows. Okay, we're going to have multiple flows. So in this case, we are going to, let's actually run this application first, and then I'm going to explain. So flow declarative. So this is a case that both flow definitions are created in XML file format. So here we are going to enter flow 1, and we goes to next, and next, and then here in this page we are going to enter flow 2. Okay, so flow 2, and these are the values coming from the flow 1. Okay, next, and then next, and then we can actually move on to flow 1. Okay, and so we actually move to the flow 1. So we're actually going back and forth, and so you can see the flow 1 still actually maintains the data that was actually entered before. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at the code. So in this case, if you see the the directory structure, we see flow 1 and flow 2, and in this case, both flow definitions are created using XML file. So we have a flow 1 flow XML file and flow 2 flow XML file. Okay, so if you see, this is the so let's take a look at the operation flow. So when the application is first executed, index HTML file gets executed. Index XHTML file gets executed. Oh, it's probably index HTML file. Okay, so here we are going to click the flow 1, and JSF runtime will check whether there is a directory called the flow 1, and will assume it is a flow if there is a flow 1 directory. So it will display the first page, starting page of flow 1, which is the flow1.xml file. Okay, so this guy. So we enter flow. So this is the flow. This is a flow definition file. So let's take a look at the flow definition file. So this is a flow definition file, and it has a 2 return node. Okay, so it could be either task flow return 1 or go home, and depending on which one is returned, it will use either this one or index. Now this guy has inbound parameters, and this is actually when the flow 1 is called from flow 2, this will be received as input inbound parameter. And then it calls flow 2. It could call flow 2, and when flow 2 is called, these are the outbound parameters it wants to pass. Okay, right now is actually in hard coded, but you can certainly have the expression language syntax, of course. Okay. Okay, so now flow 1 XHTML, the starting page will get displayed. Okay, so here it just display the parameters. Okay, initially it shouldn't have anything. Okay, so but when it's coming from the flow 2, then you should have it. Okay, then it goes to the next page, flow 1A, which is this, and then flow 1A has flow 1, flow 1B, and go home. So depending on which one is clicked, it will either go home or it goes to the different pages. Okay, and also user can actually enter some data here. Okay, so here JPassion 2, and it goes the next, and this is the next one is flow 1B. Okay, so flow 1B could have flow 1A page, or it could task flow return 1. So this is the one of the return value, right? And this is also one of the return value. Or it could call flow 2. So again, JSF runtime will actually make an intelligent decision. And if there is the call flow 2 defined in the flow 1. Okay, so if you take a look at the configuration file of flow 1, you can see there is actually a call ID of call flow 2. So JSF runtime will see, this is in fact the another flow, which is defined as flow 2. Okay, so basically that's what's happening when this guy is clicked. Okay, and yeah, so this is something I just mentioned. Okay, and then flow 2 directory. So flow 2 directory works pretty much the same as flow 1. So it does have its return IDs, and it does have inbound parameters and the output parameters. So when it's calling call flow 1, these are the values that that are used as outbound parameters. Okay, and it works exactly the same. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you guys about 12 minutes to finish this exercise. And the hands-on lab, in fact, we have a multiple. So we have a declarative, mixed, and programmatic. So mixed is the case, exactly the same behavior, but in this case, we are going to have this one. The flow 1 will use the Java definition, and this one is using flow 2 is using XML definition. So in this case, if you take a look at the flow 1 Java code, so this is where flow definition is created using Java code. Okay. All right. So I'll give you guys about 12 minutes to finish this exercise.